We are Pacific Islanders. We are storytellers. We carry buried deep in our chest 1,000 stories, our own, that of our parents, and of our experiences. In the year 2000, with 4 friends of mine and a mentor called Penny Moore, we formed the first gay lobby in Fiji and probably the South Pacific. We were advocating against constitutional changes by the government of the day that was going to contravene our right to sexual orientation that was enshrined in the Constitution. I've been an activist ever since. Now, around that time, I traveled around Fiji doing work with other gay activists, and I changed. In the last 5 years, I've been doing work with the women's group, and my role in that space was to facilitate sessions for police officers on the need for equal rights for gay people. And like all rights trainers do, I use the rule of law and human rights frameworks to engage as police officers. Now, around that same time, my work as a poet began to change. I began to write about growing up, about my family, about school life. And I was sharing that in different spoken word spaces in Suva. That began to bleed into the work I was doing with the police officers. That began to change me. It began to change the way I presented the work. I believe that lived experiences and storytelling is a powerful way for connection. And I was able, in that room, in the many rooms since that time, with police officers, to engage them. Now, I am from here. I'm from Suva. I grew up in Vesari. In the 70s, in the 80s, I was, how old was I? I was probably 6. In the 80s, and I listened to things like Whitney Houston, El DeBarge, Madonna. And on the school playground that day, one of the older kids, as I was playing with some girls, walked over to me. And he looked at me and he said, you're a pufta. And I looked at him and I hadn't heard that word before and I didn't know what it meant, but he said it so loud that everybody in the playground heard it. And he continued and he said, yeah, you're a pufta. And I didn't know what to do, so I started to cry. And then he laughed, and everybody laughed. I spent the rest of the day making myself small enough so nobody would notice me. When I got home that day, on the dinner table, as we were having our after-school meal of bread from Felicidama's shop and with guava jam that my mother made in buckets that lasted all year round, I told her. And I said, Mom, I heard this today. And she looked at me and she said, okay. Then she looked at my brothers and sisters and she said, from this moment forward, I don't ever want to hear the words pufta, ongauri, or any one of those kinds of words spoken in this house. And you, all of you guys have to look after Peter. And Peter, she said, you have to be strong. After that, every day for school, as I put on my school uniform, I had to arm myself. I had to get myself ready. And I think all I needed was to hear my mother's words, to push through, because it was constant. They called me names, and it was difficult. But you just endure. Like all Pacific Islanders, you put your head down and you just push on forward. I pushed through primary school with all that hardness. Once you become a senior in primary school, things change. You can talk back. Now, after that, my father thought that I should go to an all-boys high school because it should make a man out of me. And then I was sent on to high school. The first day of high school, we were gathered into the school hall with 100 other boys who were supposed to be sorted into our classes. I got Form 3G. And I was so excited to be in high school. I had a brand new bag. You know the smell of new things? I had a brand new bag. I had brand new stuff, like stationery. And when I got to my class, I took the seat right up the front, on the left, close to the windows. I was looking across at the Form 6 block. And then he walked in, the school teacher, and he sat on the table, put his feet up on the chair, and he said, we'll start from you. He pointed at me. And I stood up, and I said, hello, my name is Peter, and I come here from Maris Convent Primary School. And he stopped and he looked and he said, "Why do you look like a boy but sound like a girl?" And then he laughed. And everybody laughed. I sat down very quickly and I was sent back to that playground, to that day. I didn't know what to say. I spent the rest of the day just really quiet. And when I went home that day, I couldn't tell my mother because it was different now. I was 13 and I knew I had the shame of liking other boys. I couldn't tell her the truth. High school was hard. It was a difficult place. I never made it to school assembly because the boys would lift my stool and poke my bum. And I could never use the bathrooms because it was just difficult. But high school was also where I found myself. I found the drama club, of course, and they quickly made me president. We wrote a play, and our play was realized and celebrated at the drama festival, and it's amazing to see one's work celebrated like that. And even though that place was a hard place, there were small moments that was triumphant and awesome and saved me. Poetry was something I always turned to. I always wrote poetry even before I was writing poetry. Writers are writers even before they put pen to paper. Writers are people that daydream. They are the ones that sit in a tree and watch the clouds change. They are the ones that watch the leaves turn. Writers are writers and they are thinkers, and I was that person. And so because I couldn't tell my mother or share anyone these thoughts that was in my head, I put it into a book. And I always wrote. And I submitted a poem in Form 5 to the school magazine, and they published it, and the poem was about releasing the beast within. It was the 90s. I think I was coming out to the school. But nobody knew what coming out was. Later, after I finished high school, my father worked for the Catholic Church, so there was no means or information to send me on to tertiary education. Means, money, information. They didn't know anything like scholarships, so they said, "Go and get a job." So I came to Suva. I moved out of home at the age of 17 because when you're raised in a Catholic family and you believe in Jesus like they do, I had shame in my heart. I had the shame of knowing that I was gay and different and I didn't belong in that space. And I had the shame of knowing that. So leaving home at 17 was an easy way just for me to get out of that space and get away from those people. And I moved out of home because a friend of mine said, "Hey, I have a room, come and stay with us." So I moved out immediately. I got a job at a curry takeaway on Terry Walk. And the first gay people I met were two effeminate, tough men. One was a hairdresser, and the other one was a pastry chef at the local hotel, stereotypical gay roles. But they were tough, and they wore women's clothing, and they wore makeup, and they would fight people on the street and talk back, and I looked at them and I thought, wow, they were rock stars. I began to dress the same way they did. I began to wear makeup. Though I wasn't safe or comfortable in this new skin, I belonged. I belonged to them. And though we existed on the fringes. Though the times were fun and drunken and sex had in dark places, I fit. I fit in that place. When I changed jobs, I changed friends. And these new friends I made were thinkers. Their homes are filled with art. They talked of ideas. And I felt like I was saved. I began to write poetry again. I began to dream again. That was wonderful and incredible. Now, along that time, I kept on meeting this wonderful person called Penny Moore, and she told me to come to a grog session in 1999. It was late 1999. And over the grog session, I met other gay people like me, and gay people whose parents knew that they were gay and loved them still, and gay people who went to church still. And I watched and met all these people, and I was really filled with this new sense of knowing that it was okay, that we weren't just people that existed in this black and white world and we were the gray. We weren't just people on the outside. We weren't just stand-ins in a role in a movie. We were real, and these people were real. Now, in that place, I began to become politicized because we found out that many people like us left home for the same reasons I did, because of shame. Some of them were kicked out. A lot of the men I met were sex workers on the street, an easy trade to get into when you got no money in the big bad city. Over that time, I became an activist. People referred to me as an activist, so I guess I was one. Now, the work I do now with these police officers in the rooms that I have in different hotels here in Suva and in Nandi, storytelling like this is an easy means for engagement. They are able to understand the situation of many other people like me. The rights-based conversation is one way forward. It is one way forward. And storytelling like this is a Pacific way. It's a way of connecting. It's a way of them hearing the hardness and the pain. And that we get some breakthrough. We are able in that space to unpackage religious ideas. And they asked me, how did you do it? And I thought, I don't know, we just do it. We just do it every day. But I believe that storytelling is a core part of who we are and can be used as an incredible tool. And I think with monitoring and with things like evaluation, we are able to take this thing and make it bigger and allow other small spaces, like the space I create with this women's group, to be multiplied across the Pacific. And people are able to open their hearts. And after that, hopefully, they'll open their minds. Now, at 40, I am in love with this amazing young man who teaches me every day to love. We learn to love each other every day. Almost a year now, so it's a lovely thing. My parents now long gone. There are times I feel like an orphan. But I know now that the pain that I've endured, just like the pain of many other gay people that have gone through in Fiji and other parts of the Pacific, it feeds the work I do today and feeds the poetry that I present to people like you. Thank you very much.